both, again, across the business, your marketing spend, across how you're actually building the product, building out massive technical infrastructures to handle the millions of users you think you're going to get. And that's very, very, very tempting. That's one of the problems I've often fallen into, or the traps I've fallen into myself, is overbuilding the core technology uh, before you hit product market fit. And that is a good way to run out of money and run out of steam and not hit it. But so yeah, you just want to really keep things simple, keep testing, keep gathering feedback, keep iterating. This is where I typically start thinking of the path towards product market fit as being a scientific like approach. So actually following the scientific method of, define or identify a problem, define a hypothesis, start running tests to see if you've found a solution for that, gather feedback, use that feedback to gather more insights and create that flywheel of iteration. Usually in the early stages of a startup, I will focus myself on the product. So specifically the thing that I am building. But it's also another easy trap to fall into is only focusing on the product, or at least it's easy for me because I'm a heavily product-focused individual. But you can't forget about iterating across the business model, iterating across the strategy, iterating across every single component about the startup. But I would personally suggest starting with the product itself, because that's the thing that your customers are actually going to be using and interacting with. And if you don't have something that they can find to solve a problem, to act as a solution for their problem, nothing else matters. So I usually start product, then I'll either do business model or the actual key strategy. Other components to give some thought to are your go-to-market strategy. So when we talk about my current project, which now we're getting into just kind of examples, my current project, Project Admission, the ticketing startup, we've actually iterated multiple times, not only with the product itself, but also our core strategy and our go-to-market strategy. So specifically for us, for go-to-market, even though myself and all my co-founders have a lot of experience in the music industry and a lot of key relationships, we actually identified that sports was going to be the strongest go-to-market strategy for us. So we then had to basically go through a whole process of iteration, initially even just starting with identifying and building relationships, BD, business, personal relationships with people in the sports industry. So really knowing how you're going to get to market is yet another one of those key things that you must identify for the startup and then put into that iteration flywheel to ensure that you're going to hit success and hit after product market fit. Okay, so StageBloc, this was one of the early key projects, businesses, products that I built that became very successful. And this was actually our earliest tagline, was to easily create and share the digital you. We definitely changed that over time. The designs, the actual, like, yes, these are the designs, but this is what the actual product itself also felt like. The initial version wasn't super pretty. I mean, it wasn't ugly, but it wasn't fancy. But it worked. It solved the problem. And then from there, we would talk to our clients, iterate as quickly as possible, and just keep kind of running with it. But this is what it initially looked like. Pitch format was initially heavily focused on creating, sharing, and discovering content. And all of that changed. So the first iteration of the product, we kind of heavily focused. We thought that some of the key things were going to be creating content, managing content, and then having an activity stream. A lot of that kind of changed as we started talking to our clients and just constantly iterating. Even though I call this V1, this was probably actually around the 10th or so iteration. So when building the product, I typically try to do a heavy amount of iteration within the design phase. So you typically go from a a design phase, which has itself multiple different components. So you'll have a wireframe stage where you're just drawing boxes on paper. And then you'll go to kind of an initial, more pixel perfect design, which itself will also have multiple iterations. And then you'll move into the actual prototyping before you actually start building. And anytime I've tried to bypass or skip any one of those steps, things always go wrong and I always have to go back to the beginning. So nowadays I've kind of learned that I have to actually follow the steps. Each one individually has multiple different iteration components throughout it. But we just kept iterating on the designs, and one of the best things for me has been this was about a 10-year period of time to get to this final layout. And it looks obvious, and I felt really dumb when I finally locked in and figured this out. So it was like, yeah, of course, this is what it should look like and feel like. But at the time when we were building this was not as standard of a design or product layout that it is kind of become today. So typically, if you go into CMSs or large enterprise software, you'll actually see a very similar layout with a long, tall left column for the actual navigational component. But that didn't really exist back when we were iterating through. The best part for me, though, is that and a lot of the other product design lessons and things that we identified, we were able to reuse for future projects. So the process of iteration was not only helpful in getting us to identify what was going to work, but also then influence what we would build later. Yeah, so these are just kind of some of the things. This one was especially fun. Like you can't really see it just in the designs, unless I tell you, which is that this was a bundle. So especially in the music industry, you'll typically sell or buy things called bundles. Just an obvious term. It's where you buy a t-shirt, a vinyl, and tickets to a concert all together as a single purchase, and then you might get a discount because